Um, the reason I love theater, and maybe you feel the same way about this, is because I, my dad made me watch every movie musical ever.
Oh,
And
okay.
classic movie musicals. So,
Yes.
I was like old school movie musicals
Hmm.
and really just fell in love with it. And it didn't occur to me that people did this on stage until I was a little older. Because when I was
Hmm.
a kid, I just watched them on, the movies.
Yeah.
So, did you grow up on movie musicals?
A very little because my mother and father, who instilled in me incredible, and my brother and sister, like incredible um, cultural educations, like watching classic movies, listening to the Beatles, and things like that. They weren't fans of movie musicals, actually. Ironically, they were some of them. My parents had this decree, especially my mom, where she said they have to be believable. Like the movie musicals have to be believable. She was like, otherwise, you're just like no one's gonna believe just bursting into song. And so we watched actually, really looking back, really great films like Mary Poppins, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and Fiddler on the Roof, which is one of my family's favorite films of all time. And so those were actually sort of in a cut above all the other musicals, because when I started getting into movie musicals, I was watching a lot of them, and I realized that there's a lot of not so good movie musicals out there, and you have to really go through them to get the Fiddler on the Roofs and the Mary Poppins. But the more I got into musicals, just in general, like classic musicals, the more I started getting into the movies, and um, so I've always had a love for them. Yeah, and that started with my parents saying, "No, this is a good movie musical." Fiddler on the Roof definitely started that, as did Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins was good, and so is Fiddler on the Roof is one of my family's favorites as well.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful, beautiful musical,
Hmm.
um, and very classic feeling. It
Yeah.
kind of comes from that golden age, but it's not in the same cornball golden age that
Right.
others.
Right. Well, and it was made at a time, because in 1967, the movie that really kind of sunk the studio system was Doctor Dolittle, the musical with Rex Harrison. And just because after the success of West Side Story, the movie, and Sound of Music, which both in 2 consecutive years won the Oscar for Best Picture, they were like, "Oh, great! No, people still love movie musicals. People still love these big Hollywood movie musicals." But of course, that wasn't true, because Hollywood was moving towards The Graduate and Martin Scorsese and Bonnie and Clyde. And so they threw all this money into Dr. Dolittle, and that sunk the studio system. So everything that came after that was a little more gritty and real. It didn't have this, like you said, this golden age sort of look and feel to it. It was a little more down and dirty. I mean, and Fiddler on the Roof, if you really look at it, is a really down and dirty musical, and it's filmed more like a movie than a musical, where it's stagey and you can tell they're on a sound stage. Like, they actually did film that in the town that it was inspired by. And so, yeah, that I love that movie too. And the more I go back and rewatch it, because it sort of broke through this time in Hollywood that people were poo-pooing movie musicals, but it still prevailed, and it's fabulous. It was fabulous.
Now, I know people are going to hate me when I say what I'm about to say, so I don't care. Haters gonna
It's
hate.
okay.
But I know there's a lot of shows
Hmm.
here being live streamed.
Hmm. Yeah.
And for me, it's just not the same. to watch.
It's
To
not.
watch a show that's on stage and turn it on and try to watch it on television. To me,
Yeah.
it loses the it feels very stagey. It feels very strange to me, and it doesn't have that same live feeling. And yet, when I watch Fiddler on the Roof, I don't feel that way. So, do
Right.
you see and feel a difference between this whole live stream shows like Kinky Boots? You can watch live
Yeah.
stream and stuff.
I
There's a
yeah, I
difference,
do.
right?
I was talking to somebody today about this, where I said I think the live stream bubble is eventually going to pop sooner than we would hope, because there's just so much out there now, and theaters are really jumping on the bandwagon, which I think it works very well. Like, I know Justice Theater Project is going to live stream one of their shows. Burning Coal just announced today they were going to. I think it's good for community and regional theaters, I think, because there is still a problem with access and accessibility for people to just go to a show. You know, it costs money, and some people can't ever make it. So this, I think, live stream will hopefully bring people closer to their local arts. But in terms of, like, you know, national theater, I'm with you. I love being in a theater, and when you see something like the Met HD or National Theater, I just watched Kevin Kline's Present Laughter from PBS. I realized that you get it is a movie essentially, so you get an edited performance, and oftentimes these these filmed performances are filmed over the course of 3 consecutive performances. So it's really a chop job of 3 different nights. And, you know, I like when mistakes go wrong in a theater and you're there to watch it. And, you know, it's like, but there you're seeing, you know, perfection through editing. And that's, you know, and the thing about theater is that full experience of being with a group of strangers in a dark room watching art. So yeah, I agree. I have very mixed feelings. I think it works well for things like opera, which, or there's some operas it works very well. But I think, you know, something like, I was watching last night a little bit of the Hamlet from the Globe, and I was like, nah, I want to be in the theater watching Shakespeare. I don't want to watch. I don't want to watch a live stream of this, because it takes you out. It takes you out. It adds one more wall to the already 4 walls that we have.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It just doesn't feel the same. Although I say this, and next week I'm going to tell everyone to watch the live stream of Famous Stand, because we're going to be talking to somebody
Yeah,
from the show.
yeah.
But that's a show that didn't annoy me as much with their film version of it, because they filmed it in a very cinematic way. It felt kind of like a film to me, the way they filmed it. So
well, and that material, which is such a throwback to, you know, classic Hollywood movie musicals and such, that lends itself to that as well. Yeah,
I agree. So what makes a good movie musical?
you know, it's funny. I've done talks on movie musicals, and I always tell people, I say, what really makes a good movie musical is that it takes the source material and it opens it out. So that means that a good example is I think Fiddler on the Roof, where, you know, Matchmaker takes place over, you know, it cuts back and forth between being outside the house and inside the house and all this stuff. And that's opening it out. And so, you know, whereas on a stage, you can just easily do, you know, show it all happening. A good movie musical takes you know, the tricks of film, like editing, cinematography, costumes, casting, all that, and just apply it into making the musical fleshed out a bit more. You know,
Mhm.
you can walk into Sound of Music and not have the backstory or the added scenes between the Baroness and Max and things like that, and that'd be okay. But in a movie where sometimes the people who are there really have never seen a musical before or don't know Sound of Music, you have to inform the audience in certain ways. And I think a good movie musical does that by adding in, you know, extra flourishes like, you know, better production design, huge choreography, things like that.
Gorgeous
Um,
cinematography and set.
yeah,
The Sound of Music, the locations where that's filmed is just,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and even like, you know, there's and they use the camera to create the feelings that you would be feeling in a theater. So Sound of Music is a great example. The scene where the captain and Maria, you know, finally admit their love for each other is just brilliant. And it's great because the camera is on them and they're backlit so that it's just their silhouettes.
Mhm.
And there's sort of this gloss on the camera that makes it this sort of dreamlike thing. So it's all these elements that you can only do in film to get this feeling that you would get when you're watching that scene in the theater. So I think it allows for a lot of creativity on the part of the director.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it is just so. It was my first movie musical.
Hmm.
I was about 6, and my dad took me to Radio City Music Hall, and they were doing like a 20th anniversary. I don't know what it was,
Yeah.
10th anniversary or something, and it must have been the 10th anniversary, and they were
Okay.
doing it at Radio City Music Hall. And I do remember one of my earliest childhood memories was sitting there in that beautiful building and watching that show.
Well, and that's a movie when Turner Classic Movies showed it with Fathom Events a few years ago. That was a movie I went back and saw, and it's only really good on the big screen. I realized how much I missed by watching it on ABC, you know, every Christmas or whenever it would come on. But really, that's a movie you have to see in the theater with an audience too, because everyone, like in a theater, everyone is breathing together in that movie, and it's just great. Yeah.
Two other movies that I felt that way about that I've seen with my children.
Hmm.
The Wizard of Oz, when they had
Yeah.
the 75th anniversary, my daughter and I went to see it at IMAX at Marbles.
Oh,
And you don't get a sense when you watch it on your small screen
right.
how beautiful that movie is.
What was it like? What was it like? Because I've not seen it on the big screen, but what was it like the scene where she opens the door and there's Oz? Like, was that just breathtaking to
Magical.
see? Yeah,
Magical.
yeah.
It's that you just got that sense of wonder that she had, which you don't really get. I don't know, when you see it every year on television,
Oh
you're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh yeah, she's gonna open the door now, and there it is. But when you see it IMAX,
yeah,
it's just huge. Every
yeah.
poppy, in that scene with the
Right.
poppies, you see every detail, and you really appreciate the artistry.
Hmm.
Kim is saying she agrees about the Wizard of Oz, so I'm glad. Yeah, it just is a magical, lovely experience. And then the other movie I saw with my children
Hmm.
that I want to say it was last year. I took them to see West Side Story when that Turner Classic
Oh
Movies had
yeah.
the
Uh
Fathom
huh.
event. And what struck me about, first of all, my children were riveted
Yeah.
by
It is a great movie. Yeah.
and I was struck by the relevance of it even now.
Hmm.
Because a lot of
Yeah.
times movies kind of age out, if you watch.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And that movie just, I was like, wow, it's still,
Yeah, and I'm very excited about the remake coming out in December, which will be very, very exciting. The Steven Spielberg one.
yeah, I
Yeah.
am too. I'm a little nervous because I feel like,
I did speak with somebody who is close, who is a family member of one of the writers of the show, and he saw a cut of it, and he said, "There's nothing to worry about. It's great."
Okay.
I was like, "Okay, whew."
Don't mess with West Side Story. I mean,
I know. He was, yeah. He was like, I said, so is it good? Is it good? And he goes, "It's really good." He said, "There's nothing to worry about." I said, "Okay, great, wonderful, awesome."
And while we're talking about West Side Story, I guess I'm going to ask you about some of your favorite movie musicals, since we all have a lot of time on our hands right now to watch movies. But what are you thinking about In the Heights? Because I was like counting down the days.
I know, I was too. I was very excited about that because the director of Crazy Rich Asians did it, or is doing it. And so and I loved Crazy Rich Asians because it had this very Bollywood feel to it and very Baz Luhrmann, Moulin Rouge kind of feeling. And so it looked like In the Heights was going to do that. And just from what I could see of the trailer, he was doing exactly what I was talking about opening up a musical where he's taking advantage of all the streets of New York and all these extras and a giant swimming pool, it looks like, in one scene. And I was just like, good for you, dude. Like, yeah, I mean, it looks so exhilarating. I think a movie musical needs to have that feeling of elation and exhilaration. And I think it looks fabulous. Yeah.
I can't wait. Sadly, we have to wait a little longer now, but
But I think West Side Story is still on for December. I think that's still on for a December release. So
yeah, and In the Heights, aren't
October?
We looking at fall? Yeah, I was going to say
October
fall instead of summer. So
yeah,
we don't have to wait till next year, but we have to wait
good.
A little longer.
Yeah.
Okay, so what should we be watching?
Well,
this newfound time on our hands.
Yeah, oh, there's a question. What less popular movie musical do I recommend watching? That's hard to say because I have a lot of deep cuts in terms of less popular. There's a really great one. So Bugsy Berkeley did 42nd Street, the film, in the 1930s, and he made two other films that aren't as popular but people still like. One is called Gold Diggers of 1933, which is really great, and then one called Footlight Parade, which is also very good. I also really love The Bandwagon, Fred Astaire, Sid Charisse, and that's a really great film because that's sort of a comedy about a Hollywood. It's a Hollywood movie musical about Hollywood movie musicals, and I just love movies about movies, and so that's a fun one to do. But what should we be watching now? I wrote down a list of some. One is Center Stage. I'm a little biased because I work at a ballet, and all of our dancers love Center Stage. Don't ask them about Black Swan. Ask them about Center Stage. And that's on Netflix right now. That's Fame for the 90s and early 2000s. I really love that.
The music in Fame is wonderful.
So good. Yeah.
So good.
That's good. I love those unintentionally now cheesy 80s movies. Grease 2, which no one really talks about. I love Grease 2. I don't like Grease, but I like Grease 2. Which is it's a terrible movie, everybody, but it's well worth seeing. As is Xanadu.
You know how many people are going to write me tomorrow and go, I cannot believe he made us watch Grease 2.
Yeah, right. Of all the things. Yeah, Grease 2 and Xanadu. Yeah, go watch those.
I love Xanadu.
I do too. I really like Xanadu.
And Cornball and Gene Kelly is in it.
And it was Gene Kelly's last role. And so he still dances like he's, 25.
Yes.
And he's great. And Electric Light Orchestra, the soundtrack is fabulous. So I'm glad that I have a Grease 2 sympathizer
Yeah,
in my.
we're gonna get hate mail tomorrow because
It's
people are
fine.
gonna be
It's
like,
fine.
Xanadu and
Xanadu,
Grease 2, these two
yeah.
have lost their
I was
mind.
looking for taste when I logged into this RDU on stage live. Who is this jerk? Yeah. Anyway, I always like to tell people to revisit Singing in the Rain, because just when you think it's good, it gets better every time you see it, and I can't say how great that movie is. I mean, it's just, and it's great for many reasons, but one of them is that and this is going to be very hard to believe, and I will not drone on and on about this, but everything in Singing in the Rain is recycled. There's nothing original in Singing in the Rain. So MGM was at this point in the 50s when they were like trying to, figure out how to continue on this, the movie musical craze. And so Betty Comden and Adolph Green, who wrote a lot of great scripts like On the Town and Wonderful Town, It's Always Fair Weather, a lot of things. They were charged by Arthur Freed, who was heading up the musicals division, to go around MGM and collect stories. So everything that happens in Singing in the Rain happened at MGM. Everything. And every song that's in Singing in the Rain was used in an MGM film before Singing in the Rain, so nothing was written originally for the movie musical. Every costume, every set piece was recycled from old MGM films. In fact, the couch that Donald O'Connor, Gene Kelly, and Debbie Reynolds fall on at the end of Good Morning was the same couch that Greta Garbo used in her first MGM speaking film. Wow. So it's like, it's just a great musical because it's just recycled from everything at MGM. So I love that movie and love going back to it.
And it is a happy pill. If you need
such a happy pill
in this very strange time we're living in, it is a fun, beautiful, big, splashy musical comedy.
And I can't stand them. Yeah, exactly. Can't stand them. I also love, so Fiddler on the Roof we've mentioned. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is, I think, on Amazon Prime right now. Is always fun to go to. And people are going to hate me for recommending this out of season, but I do love going back to White Christmas. I think White Christmas is a great film. There aren't a lot of Christmas movie musicals. There is a Scrooge musical, which is written by the guys who did Willy Wonka. But it's very dark. It's not really kid friendly. But White Christmas is always great to watch. Yeah. What do you guys watch? Do you watch any movie musicals at Christmas? Have you shown your kids White Christmas?
I really like Meet Me in St. Louis. It's not a Christmas movie, but there's Christmas, beautiful, classic Christmas.
Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas.
Christmas. I think Judy Garland never looked more beautiful than she did in that movie. It was another movie that my dad took me to and I saw on the big screen when I was a kid. So there's a lot of memories associated with that movie. But to your point, I don't think a lot of
there's not quite a bit. Speaking of Judy Garland, there's quite a bit of great movie musicals she did, because a lot of people think that Wizard of Oz kicked her off, and it did, but also Babes in Arms with Mickey Rooney and Babes on Broadway. But I think my favorite of hers is probably her version of Star is Born from 1954, which is not talked about as often as the Barbra Streisand version, but is equally as great. And her musical moments in that are just breathtaking, riveting. And that's her and James Mason. It's long. It's about like 3 hours and 20 minutes or something, but it's completely riveting. And when the Bradley Cooper version came out, I noticed that he actually based his screenplay off of the Judy Garland version. So, which was written by Moss Hart, who was a famous American playwright, and which Act One is based on. So I highly recommend *Star Is Born*. And then, if you're in the mood for a delightful French movie musical, there's a movie from 1964 called *The Umbrellas of Cherbourg*, which was the film that inspired *La La Land*. So, or the basis of *La La Land*. So it stars Catherine Deneuve in her first starring role, and it's an all sung through French pop opera. So it's great, yeah, and it's heartbreaking. It's good. It's beautiful. It has some very famous songs that were made famous by Tony Bennett and Frank Sinatra in the 60s and 70s. So I highly recommend that. Yeah. What other I think we should talk about, I want to keep talking about cheeseball musicals. Are there any other cheesy musicals that you really like?
Oh, I have tons because I am a cornball musical fan.
Oh, yes. Love it.
And not Xanadu. I'm talking about classic musicals,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I really do like two that I love are My Fair Lady,
Yeah.
and Gigi. I really
Love Gigi.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw, weirdly, I just saw it for the first time this year. I think like this spring. A good friend of mine, Alec Donaldson, who's an actor in the area.
Yes.
Love Alec. He was like, "What do you mean you've never seen Gigi?" I was like, "No, I've never seen Gigi." He goes, "You're Jackson Cooper. You've never seen Gigi." I said, "No, I've never seen Gigi." So he gave me a copy of it, and I absolutely loved it. I think it's fabulous.
It's a beautiful movie, very kid friendly. You can watch that with your daughters, your children. I do like Victor Victoria. It's not really a movie, but I do like Victor Victoria. For contemporary. It's not from the 60s. It's from the 80s or 90s. I don't know when it's from.
70s.
70s?
Yeah, or early 80s. Early 80s, yeah.
80-ish, 80s, but I do
right,
like
yeah.
Victor Victoria, and I think, they're Robert Preston. And
oh, he's so funny in that movie. He's so funny, yeah.
Maybe not as family friendly.
No.
I would expose my children to it, but not everybody would feel like it's family friendly. So I will work with that. I like Guys and Dolls.
Guys and Dolls is great. Marlon Brando is not a bad singer in that movie.
No. I mean, if you suffer through some of the Mamma Mia vocals. And
Russell Crowe in Les Mis. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Guys and Dolls is lovely, and Showboat. I just think Showboat.
Oh wait, which one? The 50s one, the color version? Yeah. Yeah. That's a great one.
Beautiful. It's just stunning to watch. I love visual,
Yeah.
If you're going to go there, just go there and give me the bright colors and the
Yeah, and speaking of that, there's a really great musical that flew under the radar in the 60s that did that called it's the movie version of Finian's Rainbow, which stars Fred Astaire in one of his last roles, and Petula Clark when she was at the height of her career, and she's gorgeous. And it was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, who ended up doing the Godfather movie after Finian's Rainbow. And that to me is a very transportive, it's just big colors, gorgeous, Irish countryside, and kind of like Brigadoon, but a little more social justice angle to it. So
Brigadoon's a little stagey for me. I don't know. It's a little, if I'm gonna watch something like that, I'll watch like American Paris or something. It's like stagey,
right?
Purpose.
or Lil Abner or Oklahoma or something like that. Yeah.
And I do like Oklahoma. I do like Carousel. I know those shows are now problematic in this era of
Yeah,
contemporary
unfortunately.
storytelling, but the music is good.
Yeah, and the dancing is still fabulous. And I went and saw the movie version of South Pacific in the theaters when TCM showed it, and that was really spectacular to see. That movie's dated itself a little bit, unfortunately, but Mitzi Gaynor in it is fabulous. I mean, she's just fabulous. I mean, all those Rodgers and Hammerstein movies, even King and I, is still a really, really great film version for that. Yeah.
And I
And
think Disney does some interesting movies too. You
yeah.
mentioned Mary Poppins. I did like Mary Poppins Returns because I took it as its own standalone thing.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
not trying to compare it to anything, but
Yeah, I thought it got the short end of the stick when people were comparing it to the original, and I was like, you can't do that. Like that's just not fair. That's just not fair. So other ones I love. I love Moulin Rouge and Chicago. Those might not be appropriate for families, but watch at your watch at your own risk. Watch at your own risk. And there's I do love the. I was thinking just cornball musicals like Rocky Horror. The film of Rocky Horror is fabulous.
not family friendly.
Not family friendly. Not at all family friendly.
Yeah, don't watch that one with the kids.
Okay, maybe we should go to more family friendly stuff. Okay. It's problematic now, but Kiss Me Kate is a great film. That has some really incredible dance scenes because of Fosse is one of the dancers. It was one of his earliest dance films, and there's one scene in a movie called or a song called From This Moment On where they allowed him to choreograph his own section, and you can totally tell what section is his because there's finger snaps and the song gets all jazzy and such. But Fosse really, he did a lot of great movie musicals. Sweet Charity is a really great one. Damn Yankees he directed with Gwen Verdon in the in reprising her role as Lola. And it's just great to see films that he directed and choreographed because you know that those dancers were all authentic Fosse dancers. They weren't people trying to do Fosse. They were doing Fosse. And if he didn't like it, he'd get you fired. Like he would. Yeah, he would. Yeah, there were stories of him firing dancers on set for not doing a wrist flick. Just totally okay. So that's why I love watching Sweet Charity and things like that.
Well, and to that end, if people did not see the miniseries Fosse Verdon, you can stream that so many places right now, but it's really good. There's a great, well, I was just going to add in, there's a great documentary on Gwen Verdon called Merely Marvelous, which has a lot of archival footage of her in Sweet Charity and Damn Yankees and Redhead and all these other Broadway shows that she was in. I think you can rent it on Amazon, so it's really great. Yeah. And there is a Fiddler on the Roof documentary, which I have not seen.
I haven't seen it either. Yeah.
But we can tell people about it. Don't send us hate mail. We haven't seen this one, but it's called Miracle of Miracles about Fiddler on the Roof to stage and to screen. And it's actually on my list of things to watch while we're quarantined.
Yeah, I think we have plenty of time to do that.
We have a couple minutes left before you have to go. What's your take on more contemporary musicals? You mentioned the Beatles at the beginning. That exposed you to the Beatles. I kind of liked the movie Yesterday. I don't know that I would put it in the movie musical category, but quirky films. Somebody was asking about quirky films. it's quirky and interesting. It's got this kind of indie vibe.
Yeah, and there was also Across the Universe, which was made a few years ago by Julie Taymor, who did Lion King on Broadway and stuff, which used the Beatles music as the soundtrack and to sing along and things like that. I like it when it's done well. I didn't see yesterday. I liked Across the Universe when it came out. I haven't revisited it lately, but I actually really like things like Rocket Man and even Bohemian Rhapsody, which I didn't think was a great movie, but I like biopics about musicians, and then when they sort of recreate their songs, or they put their songs into those. I really think that those are excellent examples, and those could be considered movie musicals. Kevin Kline did a Cole Porter biopic called DeLovely, yeah, and their
Ashley
recreation,
Judd, right? Is she?
Ashley Judd, yeah, and there were a lot of problems with that movie, but what I loved about it was how they incorporated all of his songs into it. So I forgive movies when they do that. When they go all out on showcasing an artist's songs and like through production numbers and all that stuff. So it's really great.
Another movie I do like that is family friendly is I like a lot of the Disney animated stuff because it has the feel of a movie musical. But as far as a live thing, I kind of like Enchanted. Nobody makes fun of Disney.
Oh yeah.
So we liked Enchanted in my
Enchanted was great. Enchanted was great. Yeah. And you're right. No one makes fun of Disney better than Disney. So
if you haven't seen Enchanted, my husband and I always joke there were probably a lot of drugs involved in that movie pitch, but it's
absolutely. absolutely. But it comes off so well, and it's so entertaining. Disney's really great about this, even in recent musicals, on stage and stuff, where it appeals to both the audience, the adults, and the kids. So it's like, of course, there were probably some drugs being done at the Enchanted pitch, but that's only because they're like, well, we have to entertain the parents who are going to have to endure all these songs for the next however many years. Yeah. But I do like Disney. The thing about Disney is it's such a machine, and there are so many great movie musicals made from Disney. I do love Hercules. I love Aladdin. And, it's like, but it's also like, you just can't argue with them. It's like they're so good. Frozen is really great.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we have to do this again. So I'm going to ask you, will you come back with me again and we can talk Disney movies?
Absolutely. I would love that. Yes.
And maybe someday we'll talk about what was wrong with Cats, because that's like
we can do that next time too. I'm ready for that. Yeah.
We could discuss that. That's a whole other section, but I know you have to go at 8:00. I'm so glad that we got to catch up.
Thank you, Lauren. This has been so much fun.
And I'll touch base with you and we'll plan a Disney night, because
yes.
I feel like we have to have like a trivia something.
I was going to say, we need to do like a Facebook Live with some trivia stuff. Yeah. That would be fun.
Maybe so when we do our Disney one, maybe we'll do like a trivia and Disney chat all at the same time.
Yeah. Let's do that next week.
Yeah. Well, we got time on our hands.
We got plenty of time.
So, tomorrow, just to put in the shameless plug, I know Jackson's going to have to go in like 1 minute. So if you got to leave us, I'm going to do my shameless plug.
Okay, I do. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Jackson.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, Jackson. And let me tell you guys what's coming up. So tomorrow at 1 p.m., I am doing a podcasting class. If you are interested in podcasting, or you have ever thought about doing a podcast, I'm doing a podcasting class for Triangle Artworks, and you can go to their Artswell website and find out more information. I think the registration is like $5. It's a 90-minute podcasting primer. And then tomorrow night, Natasha Jackson will be doing a talk back with the folks from Bourbon at the Border. And Friday, we've got 2 events planned. Tim Locklear, who is the managing artistic director at Interact, will be interviewing Patrick Torres, who is the artistic director at Raleigh Little Theater. I'm very excited about that. That's at noon on Friday. And then Friday night, I will be with my friend Martha, who is a member of the Dramatists Guild. And so she's in New York. She's the chairman of the American Theater Critics Association. And we'll be talking about New York theater and the Dramatists Guild Awards, which are still going to happen, and playwriting. And we'll be talking about a bunch of things. The entire schedule is online at rduonstage.com. The link is in the bio, and you guys can check that out. Thank you so much for joining me today. And hopefully I'll see you tomorrow, either at the podcasting class or with Natasha. The Bourbon at the Border Talk Back with Natasha tomorrow night is on Facebook Live. Bye, guys. Thank you for joining me.